Back. Feels good to be back. As you can see that I moved, got a new background, got everything set up. And for today's video, I'm going to be talking about Antifa versus Sargon of Akkad and Christina Hoff Sommers. And I love talking about Antifa. I mean, they piss me off, but it gives me the opportunity to use this jingle.
Are you ready to beat up some Nazi scum?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
So if you guys don't know what happened already, a couple of days ago at King's College, Sargon of Akkad, a guy named Yaron Brook, who's the head, he's the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute, you know, so big, you know, lefty liberal. He's also Jewish. We already know who Sargon of Akkad is. He's doing his whole liberalist movement and whatnot. And you have Christina Hoff Sommers, you know, the factual feminist, base mom. She is an old school feminist. They were giving some speeches at this place. And of course, Antifa showed up and assumed that they're all fucking Nazis. Yeah, you know how crazy those Jewish objectivist Nazis are, man. You gotta watch out for those motherfuckers. I just want to hammer on some few points and also want to show you some of the clips, you know, like for the people that haven't seen this yet.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Why are you doing that?
I love Sargon. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
What are you doing?
Thankfully, after a while, some of those people in the security that were around kicked them the fuck out.
Grab him! Let it go!
Were you the good friend to me, are you? Big man, you the good friend to me?
Fucking not, dude! Fucking communist. You really are pathetic, you Antifa fascists. Fucking communist scum!
Shut the fuck up, liberals! What? That black man just assaulted me.
I'm not racist.
The funniest thing about all this is that some of the Antifa pages were claiming this was a victory. Like, oh, we shut this down. We did good. We fought back against those Nazis and those alt-right motherfuckers. It's just like, oh, come on, guys. Come on.
Tonight, a group of students and anti-fascist activists successfully shut down an alt-right talk at King's College. Here's an alt-right Marxist Sargon of Akkad after he was forced to leave the building. No platform for him tonight.
Could you just do a little bit of research? I mean, just a little bit, but at the same time, I guess you can't really expect that, because I understand that there's this, you know, Sargon has this picture painted of him, you know, by a lot of people on the extreme left, the fringe left, that he's definitely some type of Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer, or is with the alt-right, even though the alt-right hate Sargon and they talk shit about him.
I originally wasn't going to do a video speaking to the incident at the most recent speech by Sargon of Akkad, where a couple of students in Antifa gear decided to raid his speech, and there was some kind of pity pat. It looks like Sargon did most of the pushing and shoving of people. I think someone pushed him a little bit. And then there were the usual voices of like, you guys are being counterproductive, and you know, we don't have to. What would I have preferred in that situation? I would have preferred that they had raided the gallery, so to speak of. I wish they would have raided into the audience and spoken back to Sargon from within the audience, because rushing the stage. And I'm not gonna invalidate it, because it did create a conversation about what exactly is this Sargon of Akkad guy for? What's he talking about? So there was some success in terms of the propaganda of the deed, but it was imperfect and it was very easily criticized in the bottom. So I would prefer situations where when we're not in public, when there's an auditorium at play where we can actually get our hands on a mic, or shout back at someone like Milo, or shout back at Sargon of Akkad, or shout them down, that we use that route, just because we'll probably be more successful that way in the future. But I don't necessarily denounce the rating of the stage. I just think that I think we would have gotten more sustained protest in the audience. That being said, there are a few tokens like Marcus left over from the first stage of the alt-right, when the alt-right skeptic alliance was based on a premise of inclusion, when anybody could be a Trumper, even though now that is becoming a whites-only circumstance. So Marcus, who calls himself some black guy on YouTube, being a relic of like this Sargonist, soft civic nationalist, he even disavows Sargon in the beginning of this video by saying Sargon has his liberalist movement. So even Marcus, garbage wannabe personality vlogger Marcus, has used this opportunity to completely disavow Sargon of Akkad as a movement leader. And it makes sense. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. It makes sense that Marcus would abandon Sargon once he takes a solid position against the alt-right, because Marcus is an icon of moral indifference on YouTube. He goes in that camp with Chris Raygun, the sort of post-Gamergate man babies who are purely in it for the lulz. They don't actually have a political position. They're against both sides, and they just kind of want they want a system that doesn't change their position of comfort that they're in now. So Chris Raygun and some black guy and a couple other of the leftover Sargonites they just want this system now, because they've already learned to navigate it and secure a position of privilege. So, you know, as long as the left and right don't rock that boat, this is a more Rubenism than Sargonism, for, you know, because Sargonism always had a more militant tilt, even though it was very, very minor. There was a little bit more ethos to Sargonism, whereas, you know, Reuben, which is another, this is like a Hitler Strasser thing, you know what I mean? Reuben was this pure centrist of like, I don't have a position. I just don't want change. I just don't want change. Left, right, up, down, center. I don't want change. Which is basically conservatism, but which is a dead philosophy, so they have to rebrand it as liberalism, centrism, which perfect centrism doesn't exist. No matter what an indifferent piece of shit you are, you can discern someone's bend. You can discern whether they're center right or center left. And if you just very basically go through the Chris Raygun or some black guy channel and count the number of times they've criticized the left, and count the number of times they've criticized the right, you're going to get a pretty clear picture of where their sympathies lie. So they're center-right. But nobody wants to own that, because post-Bush, post-Tea Party and all that stuff, the right has no cool factor. So they just keep on rebranding and re-engineering this conservative position. But even deeper than that, the using of identity politics to exempt people from being called fascist. So you can't be a fascist and be a Jew. You can't be a fascist and be gay. You can't be a fascist and be for abortion rights, that's a complete crock of shit. Fascism, every Nazi is a fascist, but every fascist is not a Nazi. Fascism is a generalized ideology. For example, Mussolini wasn't even anti-Semitic originally. Anti-Semitism wasn't even part of Mussolini's version of fascism. That was brought in later. That was implemented by Hitler. As a matter of fact, if you do your history, some of Mussolini's most outspoken supporters were conservative Jewish journalists in Italy, and who he betrayed and allowed the Nazis to assassinate once his position in the war was starting to collapse, and he needed Nazi support. So it doesn't matter if you're gay. Alternative hypothesis is gay. There are members of the alt-right who are gay. It doesn't matter if you're trans. You can be transphobic. You can be a fascist and be trans. You can be a marginalized person by the U.S. Western definition and be a fucking fascist. You can't be an anti-fascist and a fascist. That doesn't work. Like people will often conflate Antifa, deplatforming people with you're the real fascist. That's not possible. You can be an anti-fascist and an authoritarian communist. That can happen. It's not the banner philosophy of the movement, but you can technically do that because the Antifa alliance does include some authoritarian communists. They're not all libertarians. You could probably use the dictionary definition of hooliganism for some of the black bloc stuffs. Excuse me. You could probably, and terrorism is such a bullshit word because everybody's idea of that line between freedom fighter and terrorist is so fucking arbitrary. I mean, the U.S. Revolutionary War was a terrorist act against the British. They were using violence to get their political ends. So yeah, I mean, if you want to use dictionary stuff against Antifa, I guess terrorist or hooligan in some cases would apply to certain actions that the mainstream finds distasteful. The revolutionary actions aren't usually legal. That's the point of them being revolutionary, is that often these things are rebelling against laws that are unjust, right? So what's legal and what's just aren't always the same thing. And I'm not endorsing violence, and I'm not advocating that people engage in vandalism or any of that stuff. I'm just saying that law and justice are not absolutes, particularly in the West as it exists now, being so heavily corrupted by capitalism. Getting back on topic. Excuse me. Getting back on topic. I promise in the next video I will be healthy. But I just wanted to get this one out to counter the narrative about the Antifa executing Sargon on stage in university or whatever. However the narrative has metastasized to feed the Patreon accounts of various right-wing political entities and right-leaning political entities on YouTube. I was just trying to put a little drop of medicine in there to counteract. So Christina Hoff Sommers has been on fucking Red Ice TV, and it didn't matter that she was a Jew. Christina Hoff Sommers and the Sam Harris wing of atheism, right? They are civic nationalists, but they are also fascist, except they are creating a paradigm. I've mentioned this before and I've mentioned it again. The alt-right new skeptic version of governance is basically a form of fascist governance that includes Jewish people as white. And furthermore puts Muslim people into the position that Jews would be as the hyper-marginalized people with no rights under Western government. And the Muslims become the new Jews who are undermining Western civilization, every talking point you hear the alt-right make about Muslims, you would have heard made about Jews 75 years ago by the Nazis. They won't assimilate no matter how many generations we leave them here. They come with a will to rape and exploit Western white women. It's the same shitty narrative, except by a group of people who now Even Jared Taylor of American Renaissance considers white Jewish people white. So even his version of white supremacy includes fair-skinned, upper middle class Jewish people. So the next time someone tells you blank can't be a fascist, anybody can be a motherfucking fascist. Anybody can be a fascist. It's just authoritarian nationalism. Those are the main parameters of being a fascist. And then you go down the checklist from there.